Before we jump into today's episode of Small Talk, our friends at MyPayNow definitely deserve a shout out. If you've been thinking about signing up to MyPayNow, now is the time. It's MyPayNow's 5th birthday, and for 5 days they're giving away $1,000 every single day. All you have to do is take an advance or refer your friends before June 14th to automatically go in the draw. It's that simple, no catch, just cash. T's and C's apply. See mypaynow.com.au for more info. Well, welcome back to another episode of Small Talk, Mick. We actually have a whole jam-packed episode of huge talk. I think we've probably named it wrong this week, but to kick us off, yesterday was the tragic news of Snitzel's passing. It's absolutely rocked both the breeding and the racing game.
Yeah, well, he's a four-time champion, 23 years old. That surprised me. It kind of made me feel a bit old being, 26. But, your horses like Snitzel, that Maccabi Diva, Fields of Omar, there's some horses that are some of my oldest memories of being a racing fan. Growing up in a family of race goers, getting in that young age, you have these little memories of certain horses, and Snitzel was definitely one of those, alongside Maccabi Diva and Fields of Omar, as I said. So, it does show you that these horses can have such amazing careers after they get away from the track, and Snitzel's been one of the best. The stats say it all. 23 individual Group 1s, over 150 individual stakes winners, and $273 million in stakes collected. So an impressive career, but it must be a sad time for John Massara and the team there at Arrowfield. And it's like losing a child for them.
Oh, it really is. When you look at all of the time and dedication and care that goes into these animals. Obviously, they purchased him just before his Oakley Plate win, and then to go on and have the success they did, both racing and in the breeding game. It's truly remarkable, and he's a horse of a lifetime. When you look beyond, obviously, he is of the Danehill bloodline, so that's definitely blessed him when it comes to his progeny. But he himself, he has over 33 sons at stud at the moment. And he's just going to live on for generations. And thank goodness we do have the likes of, Best of Bordeaux, Shinzo, even now Switzerland standing at stud for us to see what the Snitzel bloodlines can continue to do. And on that, Mick, who has been your favourite progeny of the great Snitzel?
I think a couple that stand out to me, definitely Seamus Award. I thought that was a very impressive Cox Plate win as a youngster. And Australian Guineas as well. And of course, I think everyone loved Redzel. The beginning of that Everest era, back-to-back wins at the start. And, Redzel's prize money, just skyrocketed after those races, a Doomben 10,000 as well. So one of my favourites and one of everyone's favourites. Absolutely love the wet tracks and just love to get out the front and win. And that's, Trapeze Artist is probably another one I loved. But one thing I found very interesting was Snitzel's last winner before his death was a 2-year-old first starter at Seymour, I believe, called Job Done.
Isn't it just perfectly ironic?
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And that says it, perfectly. It was very touching. Snitzel has done so much for this industry, both on the track and as a stallion. And, as sad as it is, his job's well and truly done, and that legacy is going to live on forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't believe, obviously, racing gods do exist. Every Job Done was his last winner. Now, we're fortunate enough to see that over this weekend, we're going to have plenty of Snitzel's progeny hitting the tracks. Unfortunately, there is no one in the J.J. Atkins, but this is the race that I really want to get stuck into. There's a huge sires competition in this race with the first season sire to be decided with the $600,000 prize pool. We're looking between Ole Kirk and Wooten Bassett. Ole Kirk is represented by Aerodrome, and I think could have a sneaky chance in this race, Mick.
Definitely. Look, this race is so wide open for minds. Some people are rating those Cool Archie, Grafter Burners form lines very highly, others not so much. So it's a confusing race, but it's super hard to look past Cool Archie in this JJ. He's literally done nothing wrong this autumn. In fact, all he's done is impress and win. And it's a pretty common feature, to use those words like impress and to win when you're talking about unstable. in Queensland and right across the last 12 months. They've been a top tier stable, and it's exciting for Queensland to have a stable that's, elevated themselves into that tier. And, I'm sure we're going to be seeing plenty more of the Munt stable, in the southern states, in Victoria and in New South Wales and Sydney through the Spring Carnival. I do have some interest in another form line in that race out of Sydney, including Hidden Achievement, Zebra Finch, and the Victorian and beautifully bred grey colt out of the Busselton Young Yard in Zootanium. So there are mixed form lines. It's an open race, and I can understand why you're so excited for it because Cool Archie's the standout, but there's definitely plenty other chances, and there's plenty up for grabs in this race.
As you touched on with Hidden Achievement, this is a horse that I definitely have a bit of an eye on. Obviously, huge step up in class, but if there's one thing we know, Chris Waller, Yulong, James McDonald, tick, tick, tick there. But the horse that I would love to see win this race is a horse that's probably the most experienced in this race, Grafterburners. He's had 7 wins, I think, was it 2 starts, 3 placings. Really well-rounded horse, and I think he was just so impressive when we saw him in the Cutest Jewel way back in March. But he just keeps trying his heart out, and it's a true credit to Kelly Schweida and his team to be able to keep a 2-year-old, a colt in particular, peaking for so long. It's a tough task, as any 2-year-old trainer knows, to just keep a horse happy mentally and physically, especially as a 2-year-old. And I think we can forgive his last start. The wheels were spinning on the heavy track like we saw with a lot of the 2-year-olds that were in that race. But he could really shake things up here, especially with Willow taking the reins.
Yeah, Grafterburners is every bit the horse that Cool Archie is. And Cool Archie's obviously strung 4 wins together and just in those final stages of the races, and also a bit of good luck. Cool Archie's been the one to come away with a number of those wins in the same races as Grafterburners and a number of these horses. It's hard enough to win 4, but it's very hard to win 5 in a row. So, a bit of luck. Grafterburners is going to be the one up there. And, those horses I mentioned, Hidden Achievement will probably sit behind those, and Zebra Finch and Zootanium are going to be probably the ones up on speed challenging and really putting themselves into the race. And, a lot can happen when those horses are trying to chase down some leaders who are putting pace into the race. And as I said, just a bit of good luck, and Grafterburners could be the one. It's an exciting race. It's an exciting race, and a lot of these horses are going to go on and do great things in the Spring Carnival. But Cool Archie, I think, is the one for me. I think he's winning for a reason, and the Munt stable, they are hot to trot. I don't know who's going to stop them, but it's wide open. It's wide open.
It definitely is. Another race that looks to be wide open is our Group 1 Stradbroke Handicap, which we will be looking at today for our Signace warning signs. Our local hero, Rothfire, has a tough task ahead of him as he looks to face up to War Machine, who looks to make it 3 on the bounce for Team Hayes. And then, of course, our Group 1 winner, Private Eye, who's interestingly first up. There's a whole lot to unpack in this race, Mick, but I want to kick off with Rothfire. How do you place him in this race?
Well, I think I'm just stoked that Rothfire is running in this race, and he's made it out. He's healthy. He's fit. He's already proved himself this preparation that he's right up to scratch, and that he's an on-pace beast at 7 years old. And I think the fact that Rob Heathcote's booked James McDonald. It's not just James McDonald. It's a James McDonald who's chasing a record for the most Group 1s in a season here in Australia. He's currently sitting on 15. The record's 16, and he's got a couple of good chances this weekend, including Rothfire. And, I think I'm expecting, that barrier 17 is not going to be too much of an issue because of that James McDonald factor and, the fact that this horse does sit on speed. So, he's a little bit of an outsider in the market. He's not my pick, but he's certainly a warning sign for plenty of these contenders in this year's Stradbroke, which is a bit light on for talent. But I think the winner's going to come from up on speed. So Rothfire is going to be right in amongst that.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think it's the worst thing for him. Obviously, this poor horse has just been riddled with injury, and we saw him get a stone bruise that ruled him out of the Kingsford Smith. But with it having been run last weekend, I don't think that him missing that race is the worst thing for this horse. He's done a fair bit of swimming. He obviously galloped on Tuesday, will be vetted today. But him being fresh, like you said, he's going to be drawn out wide. He's going to have to go hard early to take that lead as we anticipate and come across. Him being nice and fresh and feeling well in himself isn't the worst thing for this horse. But when he's taking on the likes of War Machine, that is going to be a tough task. This horse is building a real picket fence for the Hayes brothers.
Yeah, War Machine's exactly that. His name. He's a machine, and he brings the best recent form, and he deserves to be favourite. Is he too short? Probably. I'd say yes, he's too short. I'd say he'll continue to drift before they jump. But the short quote's a reflection of the quality missing in this race. As I said when we were talking about Rothfire, it's not the deepest Stradbroke we've ever seen, but he goes on top for me, does War Machine, and hopefully Lindsay Park can claim their first Stradbroke, which is it's kind of hard to believe. We spoke about it last week that the Hayes dynasty just about have every trophy in Australian racing in their cabinet. It's a full cabinet, but they don't have a Stradbroke, and I'm sure that the boys have put their heart and soul into this one to get a one up on the great David Hayes and the great Colin Hayes. But as I said, War Machine on top for me brings the best form, but there's going to be some hectic pace and speed in this race that could throw a horse like War Machine off, who's really not proven at Group 1 level yet.
Yeah, that's it. We're really looking to see if we can get a marker of his quality. But I believe looking post barrier draw, he's probably the only horse in this race who's benefited from the barrier draw. As you touched on, a lot of the speed when we look at Rothfire, front page, they've all drawn out wide. And I think, as we touched on, they're going to go hard early, come forward, come across. From barrier 13, he could actually get a nice run just behind them as they fan out. I'm imagining that gap, the seas parting ways, and he can just storm home down the Eagle Farm Straight. And for that reason, I'm with you. He is on top for me. But the most interesting storyline in this. First up, we have Private Eye. No one has won a Stradbroke first up since 2001. It's a tough task.
Yeah, since Giga Kicks, come out of this race, Private Eye's taken that number one saddlecloth in the strutty, and he's trying to buck a number of trends, like you said, including being the first this century to win the horse with the top weight and without a lead up run, which is it's tough in itself. I think you said 2001, it was Crawl who won then, and Crawl was coming off 56 days without a run. Private Eye hasn't raced in 182, but Joe Pride's 4 barrier trials into this horse. So I don't think fitness is going to be an issue for Private Eye. I don't think that's going to be an excuse. It's going to take a massive effort under these conditions, but how can you doubt Joe Pride? He is on an absolute heater right across the country, and Private Eye is one of his best horses, and I can only imagine he's got him cherry ripe to really put himself into this race and prove that he's still one of the best, sprinters and a horse that can get up to 1,400 and even a mile. I'm sure Private Eye, he's getting older, but he's definitely one of the best and most accomplished horses in this race, and I'm excited to see him go around with that fitness, but also being fresh and haven't raced in a while. It's super exciting, and Joe Pride is the man at the moment in Sydney. Can he bring his form to Brisbane? We'll see this weekend.
Yeah, we'll see. I can't have Private Eye in this. I think obviously history is against him. His best is behind him. Will he be competitive? Possibly, due to how weak this Stradbroke really is. But I don't think that he is at all competitive in this race. Now, the horse that I do have my eye on in the Group 1 Stradbroke Handicap is Rise at Dawn for Team Hayes. He's on the quick backup from the Kingsford Smith last weekend where he was first up, so that's going to be a tough task in itself, but he's truly going to benefit from that drastic drop down in the weights from 59 to just 52.5 kilos. When I look at a Stradbroke, I don't know about you, Mick, but I look for horses that can run a really strong mile. This is a really high pressure 1,400 metre race. They always go hard early. And this horse, he has won 4 races at the mile and was competitive enough in both a Doncaster and an All-Star mile. My only query is that barrier draw. The inside draw could be a little bit sticky when, as we said, you've got all the speed outside of you. But if Declan Bates can just sort of push up, get a nice run just behind them and let him work up through his gears down the Eagle Farm Straight, he could be really competitive and shake things up in a Stradbroke.
Yeah.
Who do you have your eye on?
Well, first I'll say Rise at Dawn. I couldn't agree more. He is a miler. Declan Bates is a great booking as a jockey. Can really rate these horses up on speed. He's strong. And I think Rise at Dawn's definitely one to watch. But I've got my eye on my one to watch in this Stradbroke is definitely, well, you know what? I was hoping it was going to be Warney. I was hoping Warney was going to get a run. I don't know if there is a chance that Warney's going to get a run, but I'm going to have to stick with Komochi. I think it was a very tough Kingsford Smith first up, on a weary track where it was tough to make up ground and, almost went toe-to-toe with Jolly Star, who many are considering one of the best, if not the best sprinter in Australia at the moment. Komochi's now fitter, classier than these at the weights, I think, with the 54 kilos. Gets the top jock in Craig Williams, who we've spoken about plenty over the last few weeks. Always has a will to win. I think she'll be in the finish and shaking up what looks to be a very on-pace, dominated race where I feel like the horse that's going to win is just going to come straight over the top in those final bounds. Whether it's War Machine, I'm not sure. Could it be Komochi as well? Probably. I think they're the two horses I've got my eye on. Definitely Komochi's a chance.
Yeah, it really could be anyone's race. And we'd love to see, obviously, James McDonald get it on Rothfire because he is looking to either equal or break Malcolm Johnson's record of 16 Group 1s in a single season. You alluded to this earlier, Mick. It is a huge feat for any jockey to even be in this position, let alone be so competitive and on target to do so. And it's the last Group 1 day of the season.
Yeah, I think, this record has, always been viewed by many as a matter of when for J-Mac, not a matter of if. Just the sheer number of quality rides and relationships he has with the best trainers and, the best horses right across the country. You have to have those to be able to break this record. It's an elusive record. It's one that's clearly hasn't, been broken in a very, very long time. And as you said, he's currently sitting on 15 Australian Group 1s this season. Obviously coming off last week's win on Jolie Star and the Kingsford Smith, meaning he needs one more to tie with Malcolm Johnston and two more to surpass him. And, he's got two pretty good chances this weekend in Rothfire and Hidden Achievement. Neither of those go on top for me, but, the J-Mac factor, how can you doubt it? We talk about it a lot because it's an actual thing. It exists. The J-Mac factor is real. It was nice this week to read about Malcolm Johnston talking about J-Mac, saying that records are made to be broken and that he'd love to share a record with James McDonald because, he said he's never seen a better jockey. He said he's as good as Beeman. He said he's as good as Dittman, and that's a compliment in itself. And I think James McDonald's the best that most people have seen, especially from this modern era. So, it's the road for 200 Group 1s for J-Mac, but, this in-season record would be pretty special for him, and I'm sure it's something he really wants to chase down this year, if not in future years.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I truly love talking to all of the old timers, obviously I have the privilege of chatting to Mick on a daily basis, Shane Dye, all of them just have so much respect for James as a rider, and it's so nice to see them really just come around him and support him through this journey, and they truly want to see him achieve this truly massive feat. And one thing that I have really enjoyed seeing is the synergy between both him and Malcolm Johnston's career. Obviously, Malcolm had Kingston Town that secured him the 6 Group 1s in a single season. James had Via Sistina with 5. They both just have truly remarkable careers. And as you said, they've got fabulous relationships with both Australian and overseas racing jurisdictions. And James is currently sitting on 119 Group 1s. So he's actually so close to surpassing Ollie's record of 129 Group 1s overall, which, as you said, it's a matter of when, not if for him. Are we going to see it the coming season, the 2026 season? Are we going to see it the 2027 season? And where is it going to be in Australia? Is it going to be overseas? There's so many questions surrounding James McDonald's future and what records he's going to continue to break.
Yeah, I think all the records that currently stand are going to be eaten up by James McDonald, and all of them, it's going to be 99% of them. So, look, he's, to me anyway, he's the best jockey I've ever seen, and he probably will be the best jockey I ever do see. So, I do hope that he can. It'd be nice to see these two share the record. Obviously you want to see records be broken, but as Malcolm said, it'd be an honour for him to be able to share a record like that with a jockey who he considers to be the greatest of all time. And I think Hidden Achievement might be the better of the two. Looking at those 2 Group 1 rides this weekend, but I think if it doesn't happen this weekend, the next couple of years might be another opportunity, obviously, for James to do it. If he doesn't, head off to Hong Kong, which is also it's been a whisper for a very long time, and that's something that both Hong Kong and James are looking at as they look ahead to their futures.
Yeah, we'd love to see him stay in Australia, and he has a really good balance at the moment of dominating the Australian ranks, dominating the Hong Kong ranks, as well as the rest of the world. We saw him in Dubai, Saudi Arabia. He's heading to Ascot next week. So big times for James McDonald. But I'm going to throw you under the bus here and ask you a bit of a tough question. Is there anyone else that you think is coming through the riding ranks at the moment that could be the next James McDonald, be the next Malcolm Johnston? Do we have any future superstars that could rise to that level?
Oh, definitely. I think they're there and they're going to show themselves in the next couple of years. If I'm going to name a few, it's definitely got to be. If I'm looking in Sydney at the moment, it's got to be Zach Lloyd. I don't think there's anyone doing what he's doing at his age. He seems to have the professionalism. And one thing I love about Zach Lloyd is when he does win and he gets on the microphone, he sounds like a professional, and it's part of the game. He obviously cares a lot about his craft and what he does. He's a harsh critic. And he rides winners. He knows how to ride winners. And if I'm looking down at Victoria, I've said it before, Ethan Brown, I think he's one of the best jockeys in the world already. Who knows what Ethan Brown's going to be doing in 3 or 4 years? I can only imagine he's going to be riding right across the world. He, like James, has relationships with the biggest trainers, including Kieran Maher, which is going to take him a long way. And I think, those Group 1 numbers for someone like Ethan Brown and, of course, Zach Lloyd as well are just going to continue to rise. They're the two for me. I'm sure they're just going to continue to keep coming out of the woodwork. And maybe Luke Cartwright, the flying mullet, who we've been talking about for a time, he's shown a lot of class at a very young age. And, they just really progress really quickly. But he's got to get rid of that claim first in town.
Yeah, he's got a long path ahead of him, but I've no doubt about that kid's future. He's absolutely flying, as you said. Now, touching on Victorian jockeys, you have a few specials for us down in Sandown. Talk me through them.
Yeah, I thought I love racing at Sandown. I think everyone loves to watch it. It's that long straight. You've got the dip, and it's a track where timing of these jockeys is so important, and it's crucial to be able to ride winners, but also as a punter and someone who loves to watch the races. It's really important in assessing those jockeys and those draws for the horses who are going to be winning and the ones you're going to be following and playing with. I've got 3 actually down in Sandown, which I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Race 2, number 5, Terra Lee, too far back, I should say, last start chasing Aha. I think the form clearly makes Terra Lee the one to beat. She'll no doubt be sitting a little bit closer, and I think through the race she'll be the one that's flying late and be very hard to hold out. Race 6, number 5, our boy Luke Cartwright rides Road Cone once again for the Moody Coleman stable and looks to have struck another very winnable race. Great draw. It'll go straight to the lead and it'll be very, very hard to hold out. And good luck running Luke Cartwright down with that claim. And the last one, if you played a little bit of odds, I think I found one, race 8, number 11, Along the River Each Way. Super win last start. Stays at the pet distance of 1,000 metres, which the horse obviously loves this track too, based on its form. I'm not fussed with the rising class. I think, carried a fair bit of weight last start, only carries 53.5 with the claim this start. I think the shoot start nullifies that wide draw, and I think Along the River is the best each way play of the day at Sandown. And I think you can get around $12 now with a number of bookies. So there are a couple of mine, but also one up in Eagle Farm, which I'm sure you're going to be keen on. I think Faulkner Park is the bet of the day.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That Q22 is Faulkner Park written all over him. Last year it was a huge thrill seeing him win that race, and I have no doubts that he can absolutely do it again, as we touched on earlier, a few episodes back now. Last time I saw him was the best that I've ever seen him. He's absolutely glistening. He looks like he's peaking. We can't knock his last start run. He's just been so competitive this winter carnival. Q22 Faulkner Park all the way.
Absolutely. You mentioned the word competitive. That's the word I use to describe that stable. I think they're the most competitive. So, and I think you could say it yourself closely. I don't know Annabelle and Rob personally, but you can see it from a mile away that they are competitive and all they want to do is win. And I know for a fact that Faulkner Park, after its big win in the Q22 last year, that they circled the 2025 edition straight away. And I think Faulkner Park's going to be running in a number of very big races come the Spring Carnival. And, I think heading into the spring with a Group 1 under the belt is going to be very handy for their confidence.
We're all going to have our eye on all of the races from Sandown to Eagle Farm. But before we wrap up today, Mick, we have to touch on the second piece of huge news this week, that James Cummings is headed off to Hong Kong. This is absolutely kind of rocked the racing industry here. We all thought he'd obviously take over Leilani Lodge.
I know, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think everyone was waiting for the James Cummings news. I think, people saw the headlines. It was probably going to be that, James had put in his application and been successful with getting those, what is there, 60 boxes, I think, at Leilani Lodge that are up for grabs. But you know what? There was a little whisper 12 months ago that James Cummings might have been, connected to Hong Kong, which is clearly a no-brainer for the Hong Kong Jockey Club to try and poach someone like Cummings and his services. And, especially after Godolphin have shifted away from that private training strategy. He's been surrounded by one of the best operations and some of the best people in his stable for a very long time. So yes, it's a new challenge for James Cummings over in Hong Kong, which will kick off next year. But I believe just like Dave Eustace and just like Mark Newnham that he's going to slot in very nicely, and he has all the tools to be successful. But as we said, those 60 boxes are still up for grabs at Randwick. You can only imagine the likes of Kira Ma or Waterhouse Bot are going to be licking their lips and making sure their applications are up to scratch, because that's some prime real estate there at the ATC.
I was going to say, is it going to be Kiramar or is it going to be Kiramar who gets those boxes? He beat me to it. This is just huge for James's career as a whole. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges and benefits, of course, of being a private trainer. But one of the challenges is you're reporting to one owner. You have a same great team of staff around you, but you don't have the same doors open to you as other trainers who already operate on that public model of, all of the contacts that you meet through the industry, both in racing and breeding, and how they can benefit you and your stable and the horses that you have coming through. He's only had the one, obviously, ownership group in his barn. So going to Hong Kong is just going to open so many doors for his career, whether he's there till the day that he retires or he comes back to Australia. That's just a truly astute thing to have on your resume. Having private trainer for Godolphin and then trainer in Hong Kong, he's just going to be a man that is so highly sought after in the racing game. And even for his family, what a great opportunity. Everyone I know, talking to the jockeys' wives while I was over in Hong Kong, obviously Nicole Purden loves her life over there. Steph Thornton's thriving. Everyone just loves it. It's such a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, it's maybe that's what James Cummings is after. He's after a new challenge. As you said, it's one of the great things I can imagine that trainers can do in their career is form relationships with thousands of ownership groups, and be able to be a part of those success stories, and even just even if you're not your horse isn't winning, there's still such an amazing part of that job is the connections and the networking. And I'm sure James is very much looking forward to that change. And as I said, it's going to be a challenge, but and he hasn't had that exposure in a long time. But I've no doubt that coming from the family that he does, that he's had those skills, whether they've been tucked away in the last decade or he's had them for a very long time, and he's learnt from the best. Have a look at his surname. It says enough. He's going to kick goals. I'm sure of it. And I'd love him to come back to Australia one day, because he's a very interesting character who I love to listen to when he analyses his own horses and analyses the placement of his horses. It's a pleasure to listen to, and it adds a different little bit of flavour to this sport. So good luck to him over in Hong Kong. Hopefully one day we see him back here on Aussie soil.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what his resume looks like after his time in Hong Kong. He's already got 52 Group 1 wins to his name. What else can he add to it? Just truly huge. Before we wrap up, Mick, highlight for the weekend. What is it, racing or sports?
Both. I think the highlight for me is that the Stradbroke, it opens up. It's the gateway for me into the rest of the year. Straight after the Strata, year after year, we look to Ascot, and then beyond Ascot, we get that great representation over at Ascot from our jockeys and horses and trainers, and then it just opens up. The Spring Carnival comes around so quickly, so I'm just excited to be in this part of the year. Hearing the stories. I read a couple of articles just yesterday that horse like Vinrock and Mr. Brightside are back in work, so it's really starting to get to that awesome time of year where horses are going to start being placed into their spring campaigns. It sounds funny because it's only June, but those discussions have probably been had for a very long time. But I think the highlight for me this weekend outside of racing is definitely the return of Kamaru Usman, who's one of the greatest UFC champions. He's been out of the game for a long time. He's fought once in the last 3 years. He's finally got a matchup, a main event on a UFC fight night. It's going to be awesome viewing for the UFC fans out there on Sunday. As I said, one of the greatest to ever do it. And, it's going to be an awesome test. It always is in combat sports to see fighters come back after a long time out to see whether they've still got it. So plenty of sport, plenty of footy for me. But yeah, the racing, Stradbroke weekend's awesome. Looking forward to it.
So am I. I'm going to be trackside on Saturday. There's not many days up here in Queensland where you have listed and Group 1 races from top to bottom of the card. Everyone is going to be out and about. I always look forward to the JJ 2-year-old racing is one of my favourites. But of course the Stradbroke, I'm going to have my eye on that. As we discussed, we both have War Machine on top. But I want to see if he's the horse that we think he's going to be, or is he just a weak Group 1 horse? We're going to find out, and we're going to have a lot to chat about next week. I'm also going to be catching up on a lot of sleep because I'm going to be nocturnal with Royal Ascot next week.
You definitely will be. It's as I said, it's that exciting time of year, and a part of that time of year is staying up late and watching the Ascot races. But what a pleasure! It's awesome. It's just great to see the best horses in the world all congregating to one spot. My parents are actually going to be over there, tracks
Really?
Ascot, so very jealous on that front. I'm going to tick it off my bucket list one day for sure.
Yeah, I will too. Well, let's catch up Monday for another episode of Small Talk, thanks to My Pay Now, and we're going to have a lot of Ascot action to dissect.
Cannot wait. See you then.